Hey everybody, today I'm going to be doing, I guess, a mini review of sorts, and this is for Euphoria. This show is ongoing. It's had 2 seasons. It began in 2019. It is created by Sam Levinson. Yes, I know this is another one that I am very late to the party on, and forgive me for that, but I did finally catch this show, and it's one of those shows that, of course, we've heard a lot about. It seems to be on the tip of everybody's tongue, or was for a period, particularly on social media and such. Certainly fashion and makeup and all of that. I'm seeing a lot of that as an influence just in our culture. And like pretty much any successful show that comes out of HBO, it is either something that people love or hate. It's very controversial. Some people find the show gratuitous, and other people find the show to be a commentary of sorts, a commentary on Gen Z, sort of navigating an age that is very dependent on artifice, on personas, on easy highs. For me, I really had no interest in Euphoria one way or the other, and that was mainly because I saw the film Malcolm and Marie that Sam Levinson wrote and directed, starring Zendaya in 2021, I believe. It was a quarantine project to kind of keep everybody busy, but I don't know, to me it came off as a really pretentious pastiche of like John Cassavetes meets Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. But to me it felt like pure aesthetic manipulation overall, and Levinson to me seems like somebody who is more interested in how he is perceived by critics and by audiences, rather than somebody truly interested in maybe the self-discovery aspects of art. And just the whole experience of watching the film, I did not care for the vibes of the man. I really didn't. So I figured I would just get the same with Euphoria, but watching season 1, I have to say, it has something, or at least I felt that way. And I watched the whole thing, and I fully get it. I understand why it touched a nerve. I understand why it moves people, but I also get why it bothers people. That said, I'm willing to defend the show. I really think it is something special. Is it a perfect show? No. Is it the greatest show I've ever seen? No, but I do think it is compelling. I am not really a big fan of HBO just as it stands currently. I feel like they've just hammered in a particular formula that got them very, very famous because they know that it's going to work with audiences. And now it comes off less organic, and it's more just a marketability type of thing. And they're very interested in the exploitive aspects of art and merging that with depth. That is their brand. And that can just get a little bit tiresome for me, but I can fully get behind it if it has something interesting about it, something I haven't seen before, something a little bit extra, a little bit more poignant. But season 1 for me is a very sensory, artistic type of experience where, I don't know, it just feels very satisfying. A lot of it does land. Everything that glitters in the show seems to ache. Ecstasy bleeds. As you're watching the show, it's very aware of its surroundings because it is very cinematic, and it's showing, I think, that everything around us, everything that we touch, everything that we smell, everything that we see, the social climate that we live in, it's full of triggers. It's full of highs that are just begging to burst through. As I'm watching it, just subliminally, like these images like Pornhub and OnlyFans, TikTok, IG influencers, all of these things are just shooting through my mind like, like PTSD or something. And it's like the imagery has kind of laced the entire show in a really, really dark way. Visually, I love, like aesthetically, I love the makeup that, a lot of the girls wear, just kind of the eyeliner and the glitter and all of that, the contouring of the faces. It's like, it's like each woman has like a permanent Snapchat filter on her face. I think there is a real edge to the show, and the word edgy, can be maybe overused sometimes, but I do think that this does take the subject matters very seriously while also exploring the nature of that exploitation that is surrounding it. Anything that feels exploitive to me in the show is not merely exploitive. It's not merely there just to be, sensational. To me, every decision that is made by every single character here has real pain and, a devastating consequence to it. And also each character is given time. Each character has their own episode where they are explored, and we do get to see their backstory. And I think this is deeply helpful for a writer like Sam Levinson, who I do not consider to be the most organized. And that's another thing I want to mention. This is an example. Season 1, I think, is an example of everything falling into place where, it's a lot like Star Wars. It's a lot like George Lucas, I think. It's like about the right time, the right people surrounding you and helping you bring this project to life, making the good decisions, capitalizing on your strengths, being able to hide some of your weaknesses, and then bam, you have a hit. And I think that is fully the case here. You sense, or at least I get the sense, that Sam Levinson is never going to be winning like a Pulitzer Prize for his nuanced dialogue or anything like that. The writing is very cringy in this show, but in a way that completely suits the characters, because a lot of the Instagram posts, a lot of the Twitter threads you see are very cringy as well. And I think the focus on more the cinematic quality of things and on, making this more sensory and less about the dialogue, again, is very helpful for somebody like Sam Levinson. Because if you give him too much time, he's going to start wandering into a lot of pretentious musings, I think. But yes, aesthetically, all of that, I just love how much they are committing to it, for sure. That taking the forefront is very helpful as well. It's the commitment to the artistry that I think is so interesting about it. This is one of the most visually spectacular shows I think I've ever seen. Colors, the glossiness, the sparkles that just fade into this, these really, really dark colors. It is beauty tinged with a bitterness in such an artful way. It is trashy. It's like art house trashy pastiche sort of stuff, which I absolutely love. It feels like a teen's version of Requiem for a Dream, meets like Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, meets Harmony Korine's Spring Breakers, meets maybe Gaspar Noé's Climax. All of those are extremely distinct and extremely visually pungent, I guess you could say. And yet I do think that this show fully finds its own voice. It stands out from those while also using them as influences. And it's so settled in itself that it is allowed to believably shift into really interesting directions. Like if a character wants to burst into song, it doesn't seem that strange. And, if you want to break the fourth wall, that also doesn't seem that strange. And the touch of magical realism, however subtle, is really, really beautiful, I think. Sure, I'm not nuts about every single storyline here. Some of the stories do feel like devices or cliches that present the exploitation in a formulaic sense, in a very HBO type of way. But again, there is an unrelenting power at the core of it, and I think it is really special, that vulnerability, and it remains intact all the way through. I think that episode 4 is the best episode, I think, of the entire season, or one of them. It is a huge standout. It very much reminds me in terms of design of Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, but I just think stylistically, this is really where it starts to fully take the wheel. Like, we understand what the show is. It's firmly planting its feet in the ground, and just the way that it's shot and how everything is choreographed, I think it is a knockout of an episode. And I think if there's any complaint I have about the show, or a major complaint, I should say, it would be just about this taking place in high school, I guess. These feel a lot more like college kids. They talk like college kids. A lot of the things they experience feel more like college kids. It's been a long time since I've been in high school. Maybe things have changed, but I don't know. It just feels a little off. I almost wish they could have kind of shifted the story up just maybe a year, maybe 2 years, where maybe it's like these kids' first year in college or second year in college. I don't know. I just think it would feel a little bit more believable. But at the same time, the idea of them being in high school, even though obviously the actors themselves, thank God, are not in high school, part of that kind of adds to the subliminal disgust, that dirtiness that I mentioned before, that I do think is essential to the experience, because it adds to the pain of it all. It adds to this destructive feeling, because when I'm going through Instagram or whatever, I see way too many underage young ladies, whether they are famous like starlets, whatever, or just underage girls they're barely 15, 16, and they're just putting all this makeup on their face, contouring their faces, wearing wigs and dressing like Kim Kardashian with the lips, and it's so uncomfortable for me. But the idea of that, again, just the underage sex and the underage drugs and the destruction and everything, all of social media, it feels like, or a lot of social media and a lot of society does feed into that now. And it's enough to make you want to vomit, but it's very real. And I think the show needs to have an element of nausea to it for it to be effective, because it's an unwavering look at something. So yes, season 1, totally recommend it, worth your time. I think it is a painful expression of people in a world that makes it harder and harder to be vulnerable and to love. And really one of the best depictions of addiction I've ever seen, or at least in a long time that I've seen. I could have done with maybe one less montage here and there, but that's okay. And then came season 2. Season 2. Yeah, after season 1, I think everything just felt very satisfying. Everything kind of comes full circle. Obviously, they're leaving a lot of loose ends, and clearly they want to continue the story. But just as a work, I almost think you could just end it right there. And I was worried about season 2. I was worried that maybe more the untamed Sam Levinson would start to come out to play. And yeah, here he is. I'm just like, yes. There is the guy that wrote Malcolm and Marie, right there. Because to me, they are nearly the same in intent and in effect. But Euphoria certainly hurts more because of how compelling I found the first season, and because I think there's a lot more passion going into that initial season. Season 2 is so baffling. It feels like, it feels almost like some sort of self-sabotage. And I think that anybody who disliked the first season, whether you found it exploitive or too gratuitous, whatever, all of those complaints, I feel are fully justified in season 2. Season 1 is like right on the edge where if you breathe wrong, it could completely downward spiral, but it's not. It's right where it needs to be. It's a risky place to be, but it's an exciting place to be as well. But you've got to maintain consistency is the problem, because this is just completely spiraling out of control and there is no cohesion anymore. Characters that were once very, very interesting in season 1 are nearly written out or are just completely different in terms of their motivation. New characters are added, I think, merely to distract from the lack of development in the initial characters because they don't know what to do with them in season 2. And characters that were more in the background are suddenly shoved to the forefront for what seems like no reason at all. It's very random. The character of Jules, as an example, was a really sad one for me because I found her to be wonderfully intriguing and mysterious, and certainly somebody who's deeply lost. And it feels like they just completely cut off all of her development. She is merely a catalyst here, I think, for Zendaya's sobriety, more for her character to grow. Zendaya, of course, plays the young drug-addicted Rue, and she has a harrowing first season in terms of the arc, in terms of the performance. And here, it feels like we're just not seeing enough of her, but she's also doing a lot of things that feel out of character. The whole idea of her becoming a drug dealer just felt really, really ridiculous, dangerously close. A lot of those sequences are to jumping the shark. And this season really did feel like a retreading of her initial arc. She does have 1 or 2 episodes here where she really gets to act her heart out. She really gets to have her soapbox, and she does a brilliant job. Just really resilient as a performer, and I think there's a lot of maturity to be found in that. I think with her, they just kind of found the right way of bringing out Zendaya's real personality and merging it with maybe the personal crisis of Sam Levinson from the past. And, you know, for whatever reason, those two really get each other. And I think that's why he's able to pull out such an incredible performance out of her. But I will say, as wonderful as her performance is, especially, you know, when she's going through her withdrawals and all of that, it feels a little bit like Emmy bait, like awards bait, like trying to top the scenes of intensity with the drug-addicted teen rather than really wanting to explore her pain more. I love Maddie this season, I think, most of all. It's not the greatest showcase of a character by any means. There's certainly things I would have absolutely done differently, but I think she's handled better here than a lot of the different characters. And I don't know, like I didn't care for her as much in the first season, but here I started to really, really like her. I love that she has this real confidence. A lot of the other girls are trying to project an idea of confidence, but she, I think, has it inherently. And she has a special type of awareness that I think other girls do not. And she's finding that power and she's learning how to use it as she is starting to really become a woman. She has some great lines. That opening episode where she says, "Who cares?" Wanna dance was hilarious, a hilarious gag. And obviously in the last episode when she says, "Oh, this bitch needs to be put down," I swear to God, I say that nearly every day now. Now, aesthetically, season 2, I will say this for them. I admire that they took a departure from the look of season 1 because they really did. They're going a lot more for like a vintage look, more 1970s, and it is shot on film rather than digital, so it has more of like a grainy tangibility, and it is quite lovely. Visually, this season is on another level. I think it is absolutely gorgeous. And if I could just mute the show and watch it, maybe just get high, it would be spectacular. Like that image of Cassie with the tears and surrounded by the roses is just chef's kiss. But there's one huge problem with all of the imagery, and it's that it means absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so, you know, if it's not connected to anything, all of these really experimental flourishes and just this artsy fetishization is purely for the sake of existing, for looking beautiful. The emotion that was so powerful at the center of the original season is now fragmented and it's kind of pecked away. And structurally, Sam Levinson is, I feel like he's completely lost. He has no idea what to do with these stories. He doesn't find an anchor. And in part, I think it's because he doesn't have those easy setups. You know, each episode had a really specific design, and that was very, very important for him. Every image and every song and every article of clothing that is hand selected here, all it really tells me is that your art department has immaculate taste and they really know their cinematic references. I believe it's in the finale of season 2 where they have that big cat fight on stage and it's to the La Strada suite. And I'm like, geez, that is not something you hear every day, particularly in this context. It's one of the few that I did enjoy. Most of these moments just kind of wander off on their own time, and they just stop any sort of tension or emotion dead in its tracks. And this whole season seems to be more about Sam Levinson and his self-absorption more than anything else, because just like Malcolm and Marie, these characters feel more like mouthpieces for him so he can project his own opinions on his audiences. This is his soapbox so he can talk back to the haters and the critics, and it's just like, I'm really tired of creators who care way too much what people think about them. And yet he pretends like he doesn't, and that's the really annoying thing. It's the hypocrisy that really annoys me. I'm just really tired of a lot of creative ventures becoming meta self-reflections that nobody really wanted in the first place. This is one of those a work within a work within a work type of situation. So it's very much a meta examination of Sam Levinson and an examination of Euphoria just as a series in a way, where you have Lexi, a character here who is writing a play. And it's very much a situation of art imitating life. And I think what they're going for is they want it to be this like great symphony of like art and reality merging, but it's way overcooked, and it's not working at all for me. It's really just there to reiterate ideas we've already seen through performance art and all of that. It's one of those let's put on a show type of tropes, but it is disconnected and redundant and tired for the most part. And again, I could get behind it if there was more self-exploration going on here, but no, this feels more like Levinson wants to feel better about himself. It allows him to justify himself when it comes to his need to provoke, his need to shock. There's a character who really admires Lexi's work and thinks it's brilliant, and what does she say? She says, art should be dangerous. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, Sam Levinson. That's a really cringy line, but you know, a lot of Levinson lines are really cringy. They just work a lot better in something like season 1. Yeah, this is a really, really sad debacle, and I know a lot of people were disappointed in season 2, but I feel like they're not disappointed enough. I thought this was really bad. It's not completely off the rails, but I am shocked at how close it got to completely going off the rails. I mean, these screws are barely locked in. When it comes to season 3, it's like, yes, I am going to try and watch it, but I'm kind of half paying attention in season 2 already as it is. And again, it's like, for those of us who are actually interested in a lot of the themes and the story in the original, this is a deep insult. For season 2, Levinson would talk a lot about how he does not have a writer's room, does not have a team of writers. He likes to do it all himself. And it almost felt like he was boasting about that. And I don't think that's anything to boast about. I actually think it's kind of the opposite of it. I don't care who you are. Every creator of a major show needs a team of writers, a writer's room, because writing a show is a lot different than writing a movie. I do not care how great you are. There is absolutely no shame in that. And I don't know, all it does really is prove that you're logical and that you have experience in this business. Maybe it is the nepotism or whatever that's gotten to his head, but I strongly suggest that he gets writers for the 3rd season, because I can't imagine the show going on with just one writer, because this is such a mess. It's like, where are they going to pick up the pieces from here? And I do feel it's one of those dire situations where it's like, you might as well just cancel it if you're going to kind of continue in this direction. That's just my opinion. If you like it, I would love to hear your reasons why, seriously. But yeah, those are just kind of my thoughts on Euphoria season 1 and 2. Let me know what you guys think of it as well. But that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Over here are my patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. Welcome to the new members. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.